Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Janae Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in today. Okay, so the Washington Capitals down 3-1 in their series against the New York Islanders. But that is a whole lot better than where we were just a couple of days ago, as the Caps had actually dug themselves an 0-3 hole after the first three games. And we don't really even need to talk about those first three games other than just to acknowledge the fact that they were absolute shit. All three of those games, all absolute shit. Well, to be fair, the Caps actually had played pretty good hockey for the first period of this series, initially taking a 2-0 lead over the Islanders in Game 1. But then, of course, Nicklas Backstrom was forced to exit the game after what was a late hit by Islanders captain Anders Lee. And really, ever since Nicky had to exit, the Caps hadn't been able to get back to their game at any point after that. They blew Game 1 over the final 40 minutes of Backstromless hockey, losing by a final score of 4-2. And for what it's worth, I really don't think that would have been the result of that game had Backstrom still been playing. I don't think that the Caps would have given up that lead, certainly not given up 4 unanswered goals. Backstrom, of course, being their best two-way forward, their number one center. But it doesn't matter. We are where we are, and you have to take the curveballs that life and the great sport of hockey throw at you. The Caps, moving to Game 2, the Caps then scored first again in Game 2, but again blew the lead to lose basically by the same score once again. Game 2 actually ended 5-2, but there was an Islanders empty netter at the end there for their 5th goal. So again, basically 4-2 at the empty net, 5-2. Alex Ovechkin scored both goals for the Caps in that loss. And then in Game 3, this time the Islanders scored first. The Caps were able to tie it up and played what was probably their best game of the series up to that point, which really isn't saying much, of course, but whatever. Anyways, they did get it to overtime, where poor Jakub Vrana was stopped twice, both on the initial attempt and when he got his own rebound as well, on a breakaway by former Caps goaltender Semyon Varlamov. And then basically like 15 seconds later, Matt Barzal had come back the other way and he scored to win the game for the Islanders. So Caps in an 0-3 hole. But they really did play like shit through those first three games, like I said. So all of the Caps players said it. The Caps coaching staff said it as well. The Caps really did not deserve to win any of those first three games. They were right where they deserved to be by being in an 0-3 hole. So we go to Game 4, where things do get better. So possible elimination for our Washington Capitals. So if there was ever a time to bring a better effort, this would have been it. So Captain Alex Ovechkin told us before the game that, 0-3 hole, facing elimination, but we were not to worry because it wasn't going to be over just yet. And boy, oh boy, did Ovechkin ever deliver on that promise. First, the Islanders drew an early power play opportunity. They jumped out to a quick 2-0 lead within the first 10 minutes of the game. Here we go again. They were out attempting the Caps by a 16-1 count halfway through the first period. So you could say that things weren't really looking all that great. You could probably say it was not really an ideal start if you're a Capitals fan. 10 minutes into the game and the Caps looked cooked. Islanders fans were getting their brooms ready, no doubt. But the Caps have earned their nickname, the Comeback Capitals, for good reason, because they come back, and they come back a lot. And I thought there were a few things in particular that really turned this game around for the Caps. First, it was at the end of the first period, right at the very end, in fact, with just 3 seconds left. Caps still trailing the Islanders by a 2-0 score, and then something amazing happened. Casey Cizikas, because apparently he has about 3 whole brain cells total in his entire head. He thought that it would be a good idea to hack Alex Ovechkin in the back of the leg. It was a dirty play, which the referees either did not see or simply chose to ignore, which would not be uncommon either. And Ovi obviously did not like it, and so he went after Cizikas himself after realizing that the refs weren't going to penalize the Islanders forward for it. So, Ovechkin got called for roughing, but the retaliation was worth it, as it totally rallied the troops for the Caps to see their captain standing up for himself and giving it to Cizikas, even though the Caps were down 0-3 in the series and 0-2 in the game. Absolutely no quit from the Capitals captain. So the Caps would then come out in the second period and kill off the penalty to Ovechkin, and then they would proceed to play what was by far their best period of these playoffs so far. Completely giving it to the Islanders physically, shoving their forecheck down their throats, outshooting them 15-7 in the period, and outscoring them 2-0 to make it a tie game after 40 minutes. So like I said, this was by far the Capitals' best period of the playoffs so far, up to that point. And, like I said, it really wasn't saying much, given how the first three games went. But this second period, this was a really, really, really good period. We finally saw Capitals hockey again. So Evgeny Kuznetsov, he would score the first goal for the Caps on a beautiful solo effort in which he skated basically around the entire New York Islanders defense, and then tucked the puck 5-hole past Varlamov. Kuznetsov was visibly fired up after the goal, as were the rest of the Caps, and not even 2 minutes later, it was the captain, Alex Ovechkin, ripping a one-time slap shot from the Ovi spot right through Varlamov and into the back of the net. Tie game. In the third period, the Caps kept up their strong play, and it was again Ovechkin, this time keeping the puck on a 2-on-1 and firing a wicked wrist shot past Varlamov for the 3-2 lead. I think all of us were yelling in our living rooms for Ovechkin to shoot that, right? And honestly, there was no way, and there should not have been any way, that he was ever going to pass that puck. You have the best shot in the world, you use it with a chance to score the go-ahead goal in a must-win game. And that is exactly what Ovechkin did, thank goodness. So the Caps held the Islanders without a shot on goal for 14 minutes into the third period. They killed off all 5 Islanders power plays again. And actually, overall, throughout this entire series so far, that has probably been the one consistent bright spot for the Caps, has been their penalty kill. They have killed off 18 of the 19 power plays that the Islanders have had through 4 games. So that's a 94.7% success rate on the penalty kill, which is obviously a great thing because the Caps are being whistled for way too many penalties. It hasn't hurt them on the scoreboard yet, because obviously their penalty kill has been fantastic, but it does hurt you in the sense that you're spending such a large chunk of every game on the penalty kill that it tires out your players who are killing off all of those penalties, and it also keeps your top offensive players off of the ice for far too much of the game as well. So what happens then essentially is you end up with your top offensive guys not being engaged enough because they're not getting enough consistent shifts, because there's just simply too many penalties to kill off. So that obviously would take away and does take away from your offense. And then likewise, of course, the guys who are killing the penalties are going to be tired out by the time they get to play at even strength as well, because they've just spent half of the period or whatever it is killing off penalties. So the Caps have really got to find a way to cut down on the penalties. And part of it, we can't go without saying this. Part of it, as is par for the course, by the way, and we have gotten used to it, is that a lot of these penalties have been extremely weak calls. But even so, if you know that the refs are calling you extremely tight, then you have to try to make more of an effort to not put yourself in a position where the ref can even call a penalty in the first place. And that's easier said than done, of course, because you have to play the game hard. And so it's a fine line when you're trying not to take a penalty and you seem to be getting called every time you so much as breathe near the guy next to you. But they do have to do a better job of it if they want to have a chance to make what would be a historic comeback in this series. The Islanders, meanwhile, can't seem to be called for a penalty no matter what the fuck they do out there. But again, that's par for the course if you're a Caps fan. We've grown used to it over the years here. But yeah, the Caps really locked it down after they took the lead in this game. They really started the lockdown really right from the drop of the puck to start the second period. The Islanders really weren't able to generate anything over the last 40 minutes of the game. So that's obviously exactly how the Caps need to play, hard, fast, and smart in all 3 zones. So at the beginning here, I said there were a few things which really turned this game and possibly this series around for the Caps. So obviously, the first was Alex Ovechkin. He was obviously leading the way, not only with his play on the ice, but according to head coach Todd Reirden, also with his leadership in the locker room, on the bench, with the things that he was saying and with the emotion that he was showing. Here, I'll give you the exact quote from Todd Reirden. So he said about Ovechkin, "I have watched him play for a long time now, whether it's coaching him or coaching against him, and he always seems to come through in the big moments. I would say, obviously, the goals we don't even need to discuss. No one can score goals like this player. But it's all of the other stuff that went on as well. It was what was said in the locker room. It was what was said to his teammates. It was the stuff that was said on the bench. It was his physicality. It was his belief in his team. It was the emotion he showed after he scored the goal that told his teammates, get on board because we're going." So yes, obviously, his play on the ice is huge. He scores 2 goals, 1 to tie the game, and then another to win the game. He was physical all night long. He makes a huge shot block, by the way, with about 2 minutes left to go in the game, and with his Caps holding on to a 1-goal lead. That shot block had the entire Caps bench standing up and cheering. But it's also all of that other stuff that he does, the passion, the emotion, the not taking any shit from anybody, telling Casey Cizikas, like, hey, okay, you want to hack me in the back of the leg? I'm gladly going to take a penalty to take you down because I have faith in my teammates to kill off your power play anyways. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to tie the game and then I'm going to win the game. And maybe you're just going to have a lot harder time knocking us out than you thought you were going to. So it's all of that stuff as well. And his teammates respect him so much. They love him so much that they follow him. When he starts going, the whole team starts going. And that is what we saw in Game 4. And that's hopefully what we'll continue to see for Games 5, 6, and 7, I hope. It was also apparently Ovechkin's idea for the Caps to change their hairstyles and change their facial hair as well ahead of game number 4. So, always superstitious. Things were not working for the Caps, obviously, through games 1 to 3. So Ovi had the idea to change things up. You probably saw that a number of the guys were playing with goatees now instead of their usual full beards. And Kuznetsov and Vrana had both shaved their heads completely bald as well. TJ Oshie, when asked about it, said that it was Ovi's idea and that his reasoning was, and I quote, ride together, die together, which is just so fantastically Alex Ovechkin-esque that it really just makes perfect sense. But hey, whatever works for you. So it worked in Game 4, and hopefully, like I said, it will continue to work throughout the rest of what will hopefully be stretched into a very long series here. The other thing that I think really turned this game around for the Caps was when Todd Reirden finally decided to start going with only 3 centers, with number 1 center Nicklas Backstrom still out of the lineup due to concussion protocol. So he started rolling only Kuznetsov, Lars Eller, and Nick Dowd down the middle, and he had Brian Pinho pretty much stapled to the bench for the last 40 minutes of this game. And that's really nothing against Pinho, by the way, but he's an AHL player, right? He's trying to fill in because the Caps have a significant injury, but he's just simply in way over his head. Jumping right into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and he hadn't really been able to add anything to the lineup or bring anything to the ice. So when Pinho had been out there, it was pretty much just wasted shifts for the Caps. So they're far better off for as long as Backstrom is out, which hopefully won't be too much longer. And when you're playing must-win games now as well, they're much better off just rolling 3 centers. So that's what Todd Reirden did for the last 40 minutes. And it definitely worked, as obviously we saw the Caps with a lot of extended shifts and zone time hemming the Islanders into their own zone. And this is exactly why I do think that if we get Backstrom back at some point soon here, then this might not be as easy a series win as the Islanders are thinking that it was going to be after going up 3-0. Because we saw in the first period of Game 1 before Backstrom left with that injury, and we saw again in the last 40 minutes of Game 4, that when the Caps are icing only their regular NHL centers, they were all over the Islanders. They've actually outscored the Islanders 5-0 during those 3 periods of this series, where they're only icing their NHL regular centermen. So that's why I had said that if you can just win a game without Backstrom, and then if you get Backstrom back, then you never know, right? Like, you never know what's going to happen. So the Caps, they won Game 4 without Backstrom, and now hopefully he will be ready to go for Game 5. As of right now, what we know is that he skated again today, and that he will be a game time decision for game number 5. So let's cross our fingers there. Kuznetsov was actually being double shifted by Reardon in Game 4 after having been benched in a previous game here. So that really just goes to show how much better Kuznetsov was playing in this game compared to the previous ones. And really, that's the Kuznetsov that the Caps need. I say it all the time. Not only if they're going to come back in this series, but if they're going to make a run to win another Stanley Cup. Whether it be this season, next season, whatever, they need him playing at his highest level because it just gives them that extra punch, right? But yeah, in the first true must-win game of the season, the Caps star players stepped up huge. Kuznetsov obviously started the comeback with his goal, and he had an assist in the game as well. Ovechkin, obviously, with his 2 goals, the first one tying the game and the second one winning the game for the Caps. And overall in this series, Ovechkin has been really, really good, scoring 4 goals and 5 points so far through 4 games. He's also a +2 when most of his team is a minus so far. In fact, the only other player on the Caps who's a plus so far is Brendan Dillon, who's +1. So Ovechkin's +2 is leading the team. So that should tell you just how good Ovechkin has been on a team that has largely played like trash so far. But again, a massive improvement in Game 4, and hopefully they can continue it forward. We talked about Ovechkin's physical play as well, which we've become accustomed to, and I would even say spoiled by. But you really shouldn't take it for granted. The guy is an absolute tank. Ovechkin and Tom Wilson are both top 5 in the NHL among forwards for hits in the playoffs right now, despite both of them having played fewer games so far than the rest of the guys in that top 5. And like I said, Ovi's also out there blocking shots. They talked about it a lot after Game 4. We talked about, his big block that he made right at the end of the game to preserve the Caps' lead. Just over 2 minutes left, he lays it out, comes up with the huge block. And the other big guy for the Caps as well, Norris Trophy finalist and presumptive Norris Trophy winner, John Carlson, who, by the way, I'm pretty sure is still playing injured, but he racked up another couple of primary assists in Game 4, and he's leading the Caps in points so far in the playoffs. So, again, it looks to me like he's still playing through an injury, but he's still bringing it. He's still contributing quite a bit out there for the Caps. So the Stars came to play, and like I said, if they get Backstrom back here, you really never know what can happen. So it took 10 periods, but the Caps finally woke up, finally started playing Caps hockey. It was so good to see. They finally realized what they need to do to beat this Islanders team. They had the Islanders hemmed in their zone for quite literally the last 40 minutes of that hockey game. They were playing extremely smart hockey in all 3 zones, and they were putting on an intense and aggressive forecheck, which, like I said, allowed them to spend most of the last 40 minutes in the Islanders' defensive zone. They were extremely physical. They were wearing down the Islanders' defense. They were creating chances. They were winning all of the one-on-one battles to keep the puck. And on the rare occasions that the Islanders did get the puck into the Capitals zone, the Caps would quickly and efficiently break it up and break it out. So it was really an absolute clinic put on by the Capitals over the last 40 minutes. So that's it. They know what they need to do now. They know how they need to play. They've figured it out, essentially. They've seen it work, and they've gotten the results. So now they just have to keep doing it. And if you listen to the players, seeing it work that well in the second and third periods of game number 4 was really important. Because not only, obviously, did you get the result that you needed to extend your season, but it shows you that, hey, if we play this way, the Islanders really can't do a fucking thing. They can't do a fucking thing about it to stop it. That's what we saw in the last 40 there. That's what the Caps players saw. So like they said, it just enforces in your mind that that's what you need to do to have success. That's how you need to play. And it gives you that belief and that confidence that if you do that, if you play that way, then you actually do have a chance to come back in this series. So that's all we've got for you today, folks. We will see what happens with Nicklas Backstrom's status tomorrow. Hopefully he's good to go, but even if not, hopefully the Caps can put together another win and stay alive for at least another couple of days. Thank you all so much for listening. And hey, if you haven't already done so, make sure that you do subscribe to our podcast. We're available now on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, on Stitcher, on TuneIn, on Podcast Addict. So pretty much anywhere and everywhere that you would get your podcast from, we are on there. So subscribe, share us with your friends and your family and your fellow Caps fans, with your fellow hockey fans in general as well. And let's enjoy this ride together, babes, however much longer it lasts for, which will hopefully, like I said, be for a long time yet. And as always, let's go Caps.